Take my breath away. I'm with you, Alicia. It was hard to imagine a better version of that, one that would move me so much as the one that we all know and love, but this was fabulous. Thank you. And I want to thank Rex, who may be gone now, but he did such a good job with the story, and I want to thank Natalie and Maxine for sharing their story, their beautiful story of nurturing the human spirit for a world made whole. And thanks to all of those who shared their stories last week in our wonderful service with Peter Mayer. We'll be sharing more stories like this in the newsletter and in the next few services. These stories remind us of the transformative power of love when it lives through people tasked with a worthy mission. Like the young prince in our story, when we bring our most precious things together, we are held in care and fortified by the fabric of compassion and common purpose. We tell these stories to remind ourselves how important we are to each other and how wise is the investment in our mission. It can be easy for us to forget and not realize our impact. I may have shared this story before, but when I was a kid growing up with 4 older brothers, they would routinely wrestle playfully in our family room. I wasn't much of a roughhouser, but when they started wrestling, it looked like fun and I wanted in. They seemed to know how to wrestle without hurting each other, and I, on the other hand, did not know my own strength or power, and I'd jump in with full force and a poorly placed elbow, and the fun was instantly over. I felt powerless in relation to my brothers, so I thought that I couldn't possibly hurt them. I like to think that with age has come the wisdom of knowing my own power and the ability to use it with more care and skill, but I can still sometimes forget the power of my words and my actions, and that is a dangerous thing. And I know I'm not alone. A recent Hidden Brain podcast called The Influence You Have, Why We Fail to See Our Own Power Over Others explores how we recognize the influence others have over us, but we often fail to realize our influence over others. There's a famous study done in the 1960s by Stanley Milgram out of Yale University that examined how easy it is to persuade good people to do bad things. You may be familiar with the study. Participants administered electric shocks to actors in another room when they gave the incorrect answers to a simple test. Even though no one was actually harmed in the study, the participants believed that they were causing harm. They knew it was wrong and didn't stop simply because they were told by the experimenter to keep going. The study demonstrates the power of influence, how easily we can be persuaded to do the wrong thing. And for years, that was what people focused on when discussing this study. Yet no one talked about the results from the perspective of the experimenter. No one considered how the influencer understood their own influence. Our human tendency is to identify with the one being influenced, to be concerned with how much influence others have over us, fearing that we'll be taken advantage of or too easily pressed into bad behavior. We can easily miss how much influence we have over others and therefore misuse that influence or waste it. A subsequent study out of Cornell University shows that people tend to underestimate how much they need to ask for help before getting it. Turns out we need to ask about half as many people as we expect before getting what we need. Yet it doesn't make asking any easier, and it remains common to underestimate our own influence. I've been at 2 gatherings here this past month, the Religious Education Revisioning Workshop and the Caring Committee Pastoral Care Appreciation Dinner. And at both, we talked about how to include and invite others, how to reach out and draw others in, and how to better look out for one another. One person said that they thought about reaching out to someone who hasn't been around in a while to invite them to the the RE Visioning workshop, but for some reason they didn't. And I mentioned how for years the membership teams have tried to implement systems of reaching out to new members and to those who have drifted away from the church, but somehow the practice never quite takes hold, even though we all know it's a good idea. What makes it so hard? I know it's not a lack of caring. I witness people caring for each other in this congregation all the time. It's not because we don't want to be welcoming or inclusive. We have 13 hospitality teams with over 200 people dedicated to welcoming newcomers and members every Sunday. I'm not even convinced that it's about being shy or introverted. I really wonder if it's about this underestimating of our own influence. I think, and I'm talking about the collective we here, that we generally don't think we can make much of a difference or influence others. And I want to lovingly encourage you that you do make a difference. Your reaching out does matter. I'm going to exercise a little of my own influence right now. I want to ask each of you to think for a minute about someone that you haven't seen at church in a while. Somebody that you've met, talked to, that you've enjoyed, but you just haven't seen them around. Got them in your mind? Okay, now I'm going to ask you this week to reach out to them and let them know that you are thinking about them and see what impact that has. Give them a call or send them an email or a text. Reach out to them on Facebook or Instagram. Heck, you can send them a snail mail card, whatever floats your boat. However, there's countless ways to reach out to people. It's everyone's job in this community to pay attention to one another. And it isn't a perfect solution. Some folks will still undoubtedly slip past our collective notice, but this is one thing that we can all do. When you think of someone you miss seeing here, reach out to them. I've heard this story more than once, and it breaks my heart every time. Someone going through a difficult time that stays away from the church for various reasons. They felt embarrassed about their struggle, or they didn't think others would notice or care. And then after many months of no contact, someone from the church calls to ask them about their pledge. Yeah, it makes me cringe every time. But whose responsibility is it to make sure every person is noted and accounted for? It's something that we all share. It is only possible together to tighten that weave of our community fabric so fewer folks fall through. And also, if you're going through a hard time, I beg of you, please don't leave. Let us know that you need help. We've done an in-person canvas for many years at Pledge Time. A large group of volunteers is trained and visits the whole congregation to check in, build relationships, and determine our annual budget. We didn't go through this process this year because we did an in-person canvas for the capital campaign not too long ago, and it seemed like a good time to try a different approach. I think this practice of reaching out to each other once a year and talking about the fiscal health of our church has made us stronger and healthier. Those pledge drive visits have been multi-purpose. They ensure the ongoing operation of the church and weave that fabric of connection a little tighter. And it also doesn't feel great when you've been gone for a while and it seems no one noticed until pledge time. We can do better. We can find ways to keep folks from falling through the cracks. We all share a responsibility for the financial well-being of this congregation and the building we gather in. We also share the responsibility of tending to our relationships with one another and our mission. We can practice being braver together, asking each other for help and offering it. We can take that leap of courage to invite each other into belonging and to raise the expectations of one another about what it means to belong. We can be more mindful of how important our influence is on one another and use it to raise the stakes, to remember that our contributions of time, talent, and treasure make a big difference. We can be more intentional about inviting one another into community and encouraging each other to invest in it in whatever ways we can. One way to cultivate that sense of belonging to one another and encourage mutual investment is through that practice of one-on-ones that Margaret mentioned through the UU Advocacy Network. You've probably heard me mention this before, but in case this is a new concept for you, one-on-one conversations are a powerful organizing tool. Community organizers train individuals to conduct one-on-ones and encourage congregations to hold one-on-one campaigns so that individuals can better identify their values and understand what motivates them to stay engaged in social justice efforts. The purpose of a one-on-one is to discover shared values and commitments, to build networks and coalesce people power for positive change. One-on-ones can lead us toward all of our end statements: spiritual awareness, intellectual excitement, diversity of belief, community building, and working for justice. So how do we practice one-on-ones? It's pretty simple, really. I'm not saying it's easy. It takes real investment of time and energy, but it's not complicated. And one-on-ones can be truly transformative. Here's how it works. Think of someone you know just a little bit, but that you'd like to know better. Someone with whom you might have a shared interest of some kind. Maybe it's someone that you've seen at coffee hour. Maybe it's someone who came for the first time on the same day you did. Maybe it's the first person who greeted you at the door, or someone you stood next to as you served a meal at the soup kitchen. Whatever the connection, however seemingly small, think of someone you might like to get to know a little better. Then ask them if they'd be willing to meet you for coffee, or stick around after church and pull 2 chairs together and have a conversation. It takes about 30 minutes. It's not an interview, and it's more than small talk. There's no defined set of questions, but you're trying to get at the things someone really cares about. It's about the stories of their life that have informed their values. It's about what they want to invest their time in and how they want to build power and influence with others to make those values realized. One-on-ones do take practice, so I'd like once again to use my influence and ask you to practice right now. Don't panic yet. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to turn to someone that is sitting near you. I know, it's hard. Someone that you don't know well. It doesn't have to be a complete stranger, but hopefully not someone that's in your immediate family. And I'm going to give you a few moments, not enough for a full one-on-one, but enough to give you a little practice to have a short but meaningful conversation. Here's a few prompts to consider. You can introduce yourself, give your name, and maybe talk about how you first came to UCE. And then I invite you to share a story about a time when you asked someone for something you needed and they said yes. Think about a time that it was hard to ask. So hopefully something that happened here, but if not here, somewhere. A time that you were afraid and it made you uncomfortable to ask for something you needed. Were you surprised that you got what you needed, and what changed for you because of that response? So it's go time, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and then I'm going to ring the bell. Go. Oh, I'm never going to get you back, am I? It's done. All right, I know that wasn't very long. I wanted it to be longer, but I couldn't cut the service any shorter. I know. So here's the thing. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. It almost worked as magically as it usually does. So how was that? You're all still alive. It's okay. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is continue that conversation that you started. Keep it going. And I'm going to also invite you to think of 2 more people to have one-on-ones with in the next month. I mean, what would happen, right? How might our mission be realized if this practice of one-on-ones became a part of the expectation of belonging here? If each one of us invested in each other this way, could we strengthen that net of safety and care underneath all of us? We actually have a way of capturing some of the insights gained from these conversations on our website under the member tab. There's a little one-on-one form that you can fill out, and just high-level stuff. You don't have to give any specifics, but you could say, I had this conversation with this person, and these are some of the shared values that we identified. That could be a thing. This is one way that we can invest in each other. It's a way of weaving more closely that network of mutual care and companionship. It is a way for us to make better use of our influence and nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. I'm going to close today with a few words by UU Minister Victoria Safford from her sermon on financial giving called Caution, Church Ahead. Her response to the mistaken notion that Unitarian Universalism asks very little of us is this. Friends, we ask you to be each other's shelter. We ask you to be sanctuary to each other. We ask you to care for each other, to notice when illness strikes or death or sorrows invisible. We ask you to be a community. We ask you to run this place. We ask that you not succumb to the temptation to leave things in the dubious and shaky hands of the clergy, but to claim ownership, to love the building till it shines, to organize committees and join them and chair them and envision for them a worthy mission. We ask you to understand the budget and the bylaws and the congregational polity by which we are governed, and which clearly states that all authority here and all responsibility emanate from the laity, from the people, from the pew, or chairs as the case may be. We ask that you weave here together some kind of sturdy, gorgeous web, because without that among you, the thing doesn't work. I am asking you to invest in each other. Invest your time and your talent and your treasure. Invest your attention and your energy and your passion. I'm also asking you to invest your money, because let's be real, that matters too. And we can only go so far toward manifesting a world made whole without it. I ask you to invest what you can, to believe in your influence, to shape one another and this community. I ask you, each and every one of you, to believe that you are worth the investment. May we, with love and intention, use our influence well, knowing that we matter deeply to each other and to this world we would make whole. Amen.